Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark, and we're in Ruth chapter 1, and we're continuing, and we're looking at verses 18 and 19 this lesson. But before we begin, our theme verse for Lunch with the Lord, Jeremiah 15:16, Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, as we saw last lesson in verses 16 and 17, we see that these famous verses of Scripture that are used many times during weddings were spoken between Ruth to her mother-in-law and her commitment that she had to her mother-in-law. And then it says in verse 18, when she saw that that Ruth was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking to her. It's kind of, Naomi saw the I don't want to say stubbornness, but it might be stubbornness that Ruth had toward Naomi. But Naomi saw that Ruth's mind was already made up, and she wasn't going to change it in any way. And I think that at times, we as Christians, especially Christians, we would love to have friends that are steadfastly minded to be our friend, right? To represent God to us. And yet that's how we also should be to others, where we are steadfastly minded. I'm your friend, and I'm with you, right? Doesn't matter what goes on in life. I'm your friend, and I'm with you, and I will go all the way with you. Now, you may move away, and you may or the other person may move away to far away, but you still are a friend. And I know people that I've been friends with for many years. I haven't seen them for years. But still, when I see them or when I think of them, in my mind, they're always a friend. And I look up to them, I admire them, and they're because of their walk with God and the relationship they have with God. And I am still, even though I haven't been with them or seen them for years, yet in my heart, I'm still dedicated to them. And I think that's what we as Christians need, is people who will dedicate themselves to us and to continue to be a friend to us. And so Naomi saw that Ruth was steadfastly minded. She had set her mind that she was going to go with her and be her friend. And whatever Naomi goes through, Ruth was determined, I'm going with her through everything. And now verse 19. So the two of them went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass, when they were come to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved. Moved here means a stir, or they were worked up because they saw Naomi coming back. The city was moved about them, and they said, is this Naomi? Now, when it says here, and they said, this Hebrew word for they said is actually feminine. So it seems to refer to the women whom she had known before she left 10 years ago. So when it says, and they said, it's more implying that it was the women in Bethlehem, the women in the city that knew Naomi before she left, that were saying this. All right? So they remembered Elimelech and her two sons, and they remembered how they lived when they were in Israel. Now they see Naomi, and with her a young Moabite woman, and they ask, is this Naomi? As in Ezra chapter 3, verses 12 and 13, when the children of Israel came back from captivity and they saw the foundation of the new temple that was being built, and the old people, some of the old men that saw the original temple, that saw Solomon's original temple, and now they're seeing this new temple being built. They remembered the beauty of Solomon's temple 70 years ago, and they wept when they saw the baseness of the new temple. These women in Bethlehem, they remembered Ruth in her glory years. But years later, her glory is now gone, and she returned only as a shell of her old self. Where is your husband and your children? Where are they? You went out, you had a husband and 2 children. Now you're coming back. No husband, no children. Only a Moabite woman. Because of the stress of losing her family, even her own appearance was probably changed. And that's very possible that when Naomi lost her husband and then she lost her 2 sons, and now she's left with her daughters-in-law, the stress of her losing her provisions, her husband and 2 sons, probably did a toll on her facial outlook and on her physical body. And she came back changed, a changed woman, not only in her heart, in her mind, but also physically. She probably changed. I don't mean drastically changed, but she probably changed in her appearance. When Christians return to God, who have been away from home for a while, it seems that their time that was spent back in the world has marred their souls. Though some of these returning Christians may regain the spiritual glory that they once had with God, many don't fully recover. Their time back in the world has caused them to lose things with God that they will never get back. And some people leave God, they leave the church for whatever reason. They're a fervent Christian for years, and then something happens and they drift away from God. In their heart, they're drifting away. And then finally, they don't come to church anymore. They're not involved. They're back into the world. And regardless of how far they go back into the world, doesn't matter. But they go back into the world, and then now they're touched by God, and they return to God years later. But when they come back, some of them are able to regain what they lost when they left God, but most of them they don't regain it back. They lose it. They lose that strong prayer life. They lose that strong study life that they had. They come back weaker, and they don't regain the glory that they once had with God, the relationship they once had with God. Can God fully restore them back? Yes. But the damage done by the world to their soul may hinder them and cause them to be hesitant towards a full commitment with God again. Some Christians, when they go back into the world, they go way back. They go way back into it. And they get involved in into sinful things in this world that mar and scar their souls. And when they come back to God years later, it's difficult for them to return to a strong relationship with God again. Can God do it? Absolutely. Are the blessings and the glories of God available to them? Absolutely. Can they be restored fully? Absolutely. But the problem is that the Christian has been marred so much by the world that they can't get over the scars in their soul from the world's from what they experienced in the world, and it hinders them from coming back to a full commitment to God. I'm going to stop here because the next verse 20 is going to be a whole separate message on itself, and I want to focus on that. So I'm going to stop this message a little bit earlier, all right? Until next lesson, walk with the Lord. I know He walks with you.